Hey everybody, this is Dean and welcome to Photo Blue. Today I thought I'd discuss the Pentax 17 and whether it's worth buying or not, or whether you might be interested in buying one. First of all, I am a Pentax fanboy. My first real film camera was a Pentax K1000 35mm SLR camera. And I really loved that camera. That was a great camera. They're made very solidly, and they're just a manual camera, very simple camera, but you have flexibility with it, and you can interchange lenses with it, so you can change the lenses on it, basically. And then from that, I moved up to like a Pentax MX and a Pentax ME, and I enjoyed both of those cameras as well. The MX is very much like the K1000, but it's a little bit more compact and a slightly better camera. So the Pentax 17, the main problem I have with it is I don't think it's a really good value for the money, and I'll explain why. I think it's a little bit pricey for what you get. So first of all, it's a half-frame camera, which is half the quality of a full-frame 35mm camera, because it's literally half the frame. It uses manual zone focusing. So you have these different zones by feet, ranges of feet that you can set the lens to focus on. The problem with that is you don't get actual feedback like you would in a rangefinder camera, where you could see on a ground glass whether the image was in focus or not, and so you could focus precisely on particular things. And it's, of course, not autofocus, which is also a nice feature that all modern cameras have, is autofocus. So it doesn't have either of those features. You don't see through the lens, you see through a little viewfinder. It doesn't have interchangeable lenses, which may or may not be an issue because it makes it more compact, obviously. So if you're not looking to switch lenses or whatever, that may not be an issue for you. The quality issue is the fact that it's half the quality of a 35mm frame, a full frame, may not be an issue for you either if you're not planning on blowing the images up really large. The larger you blow it up, the more that will become apparent, the image quality difference. Another thing that it doesn't have is it doesn't recognize DX coding, so you have to manually set the ISO. And if you're switching between ISO types, that means you have to pay more attention to make sure you set the correct ISO. That's not a huge deal, but really all you need to read a DX coding is a little electronic contact. So it's a feature they didn't put in there to save some money, and I could see that if it was at a lower cost, but at the cost point that it is, it would be nice if it had that. It doesn't have auto wind in it. It has manual wind, which is fine. Either way, on older cameras, some of them had auto winds, or you could get auto winders for them, but that's not a big deal. And for most people, particularly if you're not shooting like sports photography or some sort of action photography. Then if we look at the shutter, it has a leaf shutter in it, not a focal plane shutter, and leaf shutters tend to be a little slower. I think the top speed of a leaf shutter is 1/500th of a second. The top speed of this is 1/350th of a second, which is a little slow in some circumstances. So that isn't great. Let's see what the lens, it says here. The lens is an f3.5 lens, so it's not a real fast lens either. But I think it goes up to f16. So that's a pretty good range. Now, this camera's like $500. And so just to compare it with a very cheap option now, is you can get a half-frame plastic camera from Kodak, and there's another company called One Shot, and they're around $50. In fact, I think One Shot sells one for about $38, and they include a roll of 400 speed black and white film with it. And they have built-in flashes on them as well. The problem with those cameras, though, is they're kind of more like toy cameras, more like Diana cameras. So the image quality isn't going to be that good on them, probably. They also are fixed focus, which means you can't focus it at all. It's just anything in between the range of probably like 3 feet and infinity will come into focus or reasonable focus. They also only have like one f-stop. I think the Kodak one has f9, and f9 is for older cameras that didn't have settings on them. F9 was a popular kind of F number to put on the camera if you only had one choice. If you had more than one choice, you might have F8, 11, and 16. But they wouldn't be marked that. A lot of times they would be marked sunny, cloudy, etc., and partially sunny or something. So they don't have as many f-stops, and they don't have as many shutter speeds. They have one shutter speed. They're 1/120th. So the Pentax is much better than that camera because you have a range of speed between 4 seconds and 1/350th of a second on it. And you have F number ranges from 3.5 to F16. So you have like kind of a full range there. You also have some adjustments to your focus because it's zone focusing. So you can adjust that, but you have to kind of guess at it. Well, you do have to guess at it. You have no feedback on what exactly is in focus. So $50, you could get like a Kodak camera that had one shutter speed and one F number and shot half frames on it. And it was fixed focus for $50 or a little more. And for $500, you could get the Pentax. So is it worth 10 times as much as that? I think it's worth quite 10 times as much as that. It's probably worth a few times more than that, definitely. And it's a higher build quality on it. So I would say it would be worth I would think a couple $100 would be reasonable for it, maybe a little more. And maybe part of the problem it's so high priced is because, they're kind of just starting out with this, and so they haven't really mass produced it, and so they have to recover some of their costs. So if it became very popular or they start selling more film cameras, those costs may come down as they start producing more volume. But I think it's really a volume issue at this point. And the volume's never going to get up to what it used to be when there wasn't digital photography. There was only film photography because everybody had a film camera. So you got to take that into account too. So it's going to be a little more pricey any way you look at it. But what else can you buy for $500? Well, you can buy an older camera, and there are some problems with older cameras because they're older. And so sometimes they need to be serviced. They may need to have what's called a CLA, which is clean, lubricate, and adjust. They may need to have their seals, their light seals replaced on them and such. And sometimes you can get a deal on eBay where somebody has had this work done on it, or the camera is in such good mint condition that it's still working as though it's new or close to new, and particularly if it's not a real old camera. But there's some risk in that. You can actually buy a Pentax K1000, which you can interchange the lenses on, and it comes with a 50mm lens. You can buy one that's been refurbished from B&H Photo for $500. So that's just to give you a comparison. So you can buy a much better, more flexible camera for $500, but it's going to be an older camera, but it will be refurbished. And even if you get a deal on an older camera that's in working order, you can send it out to have a CLA on it yourself, and that's going to cost you probably $200 or $300 depending on where you get it done. So that's going to cost some money. But like I said, a lot of times you can find them where they've already have the CLAs on them, and you can get a pretty good deal on them. So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a brand new camera that has less features than an older camera that's been refurbished. And beneath that, a camera that has even less features but still shoots half frame is running about a tenth of that, or $50. So that just gives you an idea of the range. So you can kind of decide for yourself if it's worth it. I would really like to shoot with one. I've never shot with a half frame before, and I really like to shoot with one just because it's situated by default as a vertical instead of horizontal. I think it would be fun to shoot with one. I might go for buying one of the Kodak $50 ones before buying the Pentax 17, or I might wait around and see what happens in the used market. With cameras in the used market, after about a year you can get a deal on, particularly on digital cameras. When they come out, I usually wait a year or so because the price will drop some, and also you can get some used deals really good where somebody bought the camera and didn't even use it that much, so it's practically a brand new camera. So, to me, I will wait and see if the price comes down on that. I would really like one, actually, but $500 I think is a little bit expensive for it. Plus, Pentax is supposed to be coming out with a couple of other cameras, or film cameras, soon, or they had mentioned coming out with up to, I think, 4 of them, they said at one point, I heard. I don't know if those are still their plans, and it probably will depend a lot on how well this particular camera does. But I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode on this. But at any rate, I think the camera's a little bit pricey for what it does. It's better than a cheap plastic toy camera, definitely. It looks a lot nicer. It's a Pentax camera. It's just kind of a cool thing to have. There's a lot of things in the design that if you are a Pentax fan, you'll note that they've used... I think the rewind lever is from the SLR 110 camera they made many years ago, and I think the typeface for the Pentax 17 is the same typeface as they used on their medium format film camera that they used to make. So it's probably an interesting collector's piece. It's an interesting curiosity. It would be fun to shoot with, but it's worth $500. I think that's a little steep. I'd like to see the price come down at least a little bit on that. If they were charging, say, $250 on it, I would think that would be a pretty good price on it, and I wouldn't even think that much of it. You also have to remember cameras like that back in the 80s, 90s, and later might have only cost you something like $100, $150. But that was, maybe 20 years ago or more that they cost that, and they were mass producing them. So yeah, I'm thinking the baseline to me for a camera like that would be around $250, but it's going to be a little more because of mass production, I guess. But $500 seems a little steep, so I think I'd wait for a used one on that if I were going to get one. Or if I was really interested in film photography now and I wanted to get a camera, I want to pick this as my first camera. I would go out and find an older camera, and if I was going to spend $500 for it, I'd try to find an older camera that's refurbished. Maybe in a future video I will talk about how to purchase older cameras and what to look for in them. I've recently purchased some older film cameras myself, and I have film cameras that I've had for many, many years that I've used as well. I'm taking some film now, or taking shots with some film cameras now, just out of interest, just out of fun, and see where we go on there. I've just become interested in the older technology, and that's the technology I learned cameras on, so it's pretty nostalgic for me. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Pentax 17. I will see you next time, and you have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.